First, why did I study museums? Well, last year I spent most of my time studying and working and writing about ICH and safeguarding and participatory methodologies, and regarding the centrality of museums in promoting these kind of projects, I dedicated a part of my book to them. And today, I will not focus my talk in a specific museum's projects, because every project has good and bad things, or not so good things. And based on 30 papers and reporters on museums projects from 17 countries, I will identify positive things, problems, and possible solutions to promote engagement of communities, groups, and individuals in ICH safeguarding. Of course, there isn't a model. However, bearing in mind the participatory methodologies and the UNESCO Convention, I think it's possible to think in actions to increase that involvement. But why I have decided to work on this subject? Well, since 2006, I am involved in a project named Memória Média. It's a project coordinated by Memória Imaterial, NGO accredited by the UNESCO, and based in Portugal. Well, this is the front page, the first page of the project, the website of the project. And Memória Média is a project dedicated to inventorying Portuguese expressions of all ICH domains. And since that date, I have been interested in studying and knowing more about ICH inventorying and open access on web. So 10 years later, in 2016, I started a project on digital ICH inventories. And under this project was published a world map of ICH inventories that are in the web. About the inventory, Article 12 of the Convention says inventory is a key tool for the ICH safeguard. But more than a tool, I think it should be a trigger for the engagement of communities, groups, and individuals in safeguarding. Like other safeguard measures set out in the Convention, for instance, identification, transmission, educational programs, training, capacity building, promotion, and UNESCO's lists, they should be implemented with the participation of communities, groups, and individuals. So returning to the map, in this map, 198 countries were analyzed. The map is a work in progress, an international network that now gives access to 160 inventories. And by the color of the dots, we can quickly realize here that there are more inventories in Europe and fewer, for instance, in Africa. So, about innovation online, the problem of info exclusion is an issue to consider. People that, by not having the knowledge or access to internet, are excluded for taking part in the safeguard measures promoted in the digital context. More about these inventories. 75% are under the custody of the states. So national government organizations implement the majority of the ICH inventories online. 70% of the inventories make reference to the UNESCO. And 66% set out the importance of communities' participation, of those who create, maintain, and transmit the heritage, such heritage. But in the first analysis of these inventories, we saw that in near 160 inventories, only 22 clearly announced the collaborative nature of the inventory. And this result activates the need to understand the state of art of participatory methodologies in safeguarding process, not just in the inventory process, but in different kinds of projects. And that's how I got to the museums. Now, before the study about the museums, I think it's never too much to review the main concepts related to ICH and 2003 UNESCO Convention. Many of you know them, but for those who don't, I think it's important to review this information. Information such as what is intangible cultural heritage. So, according to UNESCO, we have 5 domains of ICH: oral traditions, for instance, folk tales, legends. We have the performing arts, for instance, popular theater, traditional dance, social practice, rituals and festivities events, knowledge and practice about nature and the universe, and traditional crafts, the know-how of arts and crafts. And considering the convention, safeguard ICH is important. But why? Well, it's important to safeguard ICH because ICH promotes dialogue and cultural diversity. It promotes sustainable development. ICH is undervalued compared to tangible and nature heritage, so we need to safeguard it. And ICH is endangered by the consequences of globalization and social transformation. And if we are talking about minorities and communities subject to unusual situations, such as war, migration, or other conditions, it's urgent to act and put ICH that is endangered in the political agenda. In these cases, safeguard measures must come in time with the risk of being too late. And it's also important to underline the fact that intangible cultural heritage is a process that turns cultural expressions into cultural heritage through the implementation of safeguard measures. In this way, ICH is always subject to cultural, social, economic, and political conditions. ICH is a social construction. And as a social construction, ICH depends on what narrative we decide to tell, defend, and implement. And the narrative changed with the 2003 UNESCO Convention. The category intangible cultural heritage has been set up in the international context. Why? Well, among several issues, to distance from the traditionalist and the classic narrative. Especially in Europe, the concept of intangible redefine concepts as the concept of folklore, mainly in countries where, in the last century, the nationalist ethnography left a strong legacy, and this concept is still associated with regimes that use folklore as a political instrument of acculturation that links tradition to the authenticity, the typical, the picturesque. And how the concept of ICH and the convention goes against this narrative. A big thing about ICH and the convention. Intangible cultural heritage is what communities, groups, and individuals define as such. And the convention stressed the need to use participatory methodologies, where communities shouldn't be understood as passive informants. They should be active in collaboration with experts, researchers, states parties. Well, but not everything is intangible cultural heritage. As I said, ICH is what communities, groups, and individuals decide, but considering that the cultural expressions are transmitted through generations, at least between two different generations. They exist in the present day. They are living heritage. They are not representations or memories of expressions that at present do not have any cultural or social function. They shouldn't be removed from their original context, shouldn't be understood as fixed. They are related to supralocal contexts of changes, of mobility, of innovation, and flow of people, knowledge, and goods. Shouldn't be imposed on other communities, shouldn't be manipulated for commercial, touristic, political, or religious reasons, should respect human rights, and should be considered in relation to tangible and natural heritage. And they have key elements and locality that must be respected and safeguarded. They give sense of identity and continuity to communities and contribute to promote cultural diversity and human creativity. Okay, now, after this review about the ICH concept and UNESCO Convention, let's return to the study. And first, let's talk about positive things that I have found about the work of museums. Positive aspects that demonstrate innovation in museums. So, let's start with the positive things in museums discourse, about what they say. And what they say shows the assimilation of the new museology theory and the UNESCO Convention. For instance, stop to focus only in what is tangible, highlights the importance of intangible cultural heritage, highlights the importance of democratic approach of the heritage, highlights the holistic perspective of heritage, as I said, the relation between tangible, intangible, and natural heritage, highlights the importance of local action and the importance of communities' participation in the museum's activities. So this is about what the professionals of museums say. Now, let's see about the positive things of practice, of the practice of museums on intangible cultural heritage safeguarding. I'm talking about what they do. So, the promotion of more ICH activities, for instance, exhibitions and inventory projects about ICH, the use of participatory methodologies, for instance, in training actions, workshops, and debates in the museum, the promotion of the visibility of the practitioners and cultural expressions, the use of the museum as a contact zone to promote the relationship between ICH actors, and activities that cross different ICH domains. Also, activities that cross ICH with new traditions, new technology, pop culture, modern art. When I refer to new traditions, I mean traditions which have not yet been transmitted through generations. And then activities that cross ICH with new technologies, pop culture, or modern art, highlighting the changes and also the connections between them. And of course, the production of knowledge on ICH. These are some of the positive points. Now, what can be improved? What seems to be lacking in the action of museums when we are talking about intangible cultural heritage? Things that, in theory, are not new, but if implemented in practice, are innovation. Well, I'm talking about promote direct contact with living heritage in situ. Promote intangible cultural heritage safeguarding in its own context with practitioners in its place and time, again, in situ. Reduce misunderstanding on conceptual definitions. Promote information among communities, groups, and individuals, and be informed by them. Improve teams, networks with different ICH actors, and work with professionals of participatory methodologies, people with specific skills as mediators or facilitators. Let's talk a little more about the conceptual confusion, namely in the definition of intangible cultural heritage, but also in the definitions of participation and community. We know that these conceptions are diverse and don't have just one definition. But if we are working on ICH, we have the convention and other documents as reference, documents that can help us about these concepts. So considering the definition of intangible cultural heritage and the conclusions of the study, we can say that in practice, some actions that museums mention as ICH safeguarding do not always fit in this definition. For instance, about the concept of intangible cultural heritage. Activities carry out on elements that are not living heritage do not really fit in the ICH definition. I'm talking about representations, memories, and recreations of practices that do not exist today. Practices without cultural or social function in nowadays do not really fit in the ICH definition. Of course, there are memories that have to be safeguarded because they are important to express ICH elements, but that elements must exist in the present day. If not, we are working oral history, memories, what is also very, very important, but isn't ICH. Activities that don't value the context of practice or key elements that may need to be safeguarded do not really fit in the ICH definition. Or activities that cross different types of culture and art without a clear goal or result regarding the ICH safeguarding. Activities that cross different types of culture and art, for instance, traditions, pop culture, modern art, without a clear goal regarding the ICH safeguarding. Now, about the concept of community. Even if the concept of ICH community shouldn't be understood as unique, it's a very tricky and complex concept. Sometimes in museums, this concept assumes some confusion. Usually, museums don't define the community as recommended for the ICH. Don't define the community as a network of people and institutions who are related to ICH and want to safeguard it. And usually, museums don't identify themselves as part of the community, as if they were an external actor to the community. This was underlined by Jacobs last year in the conference of ICH&Museums in Palermo. And often, museums refer to the concept of local community, people who live in the territory covered by the museums. But the community doesn't need to be restricted to that territory. And sometimes it's possible to find some confusion between ICH community and the visitors of the museums. And because of that, sometimes museums talk about ICH communities when in fact they are talking about the target audience, and that's something very different. Now about the concept of participation. We can conclude that museums are not really speaking of participation according to the ICH definition. For instance, when museums refer to participation, considering only the way visitors enjoy an exhibition, or considering only the way that local community participate in the activities of museums, not in the involvement of ICH safeguarding process. And there is a tendency for museums to overvalue the participation in physical space of the museum, neglecting the participation in the space and time of ICH expressions. About promoting direct contact with living heritage in ICH context. We are not just talking about promote actions in the public space out of the museum. For instance, it's not enough to set up activities in the garden in front of the museum, the same kind of activities that are done inside the museum. Such activities are very important to give visibility to ICH. But the action of museums in ICH safeguarding must take place where the cultural expressions take place. As I said, promoting ICH safeguarding in its own context, with practitioners, in its place and time. In the spirit of the convention, participation means not only, of course, but mainly safeguarding in situ, and the support to a network of ICH actors highlighting the role of practitioners, and the promotion of a collaborative process that defines and implements a safeguarding plan. So, to conclude, things that in theory are not new, but if implemented in practice are innovation. Intensify the relation between museums and communities, groups, and individuals, the relationship between museums and practitioners in ICH context. And if you say that you are working ICH, work the spirit of the convention, clarifying what this means and implies. To do that, the language, the concepts must be similar to everyone, the code of the convention, the details and their possible meanings. So to do that, mobilize teams of different fields and professionals of participatory methodologies, as I said, the mediators, facilitators. About this subject, museums need to assume that to work participatory methodologies, they must work with professionals with a specific profile. Professionals with relational, theoretical, technical, and methodological skills to promote the participation, informing, consulting, and mobilizing people, promoting in situ and in the museum the transmission of cultural, educational, economic, and social functions of the intangible cultural heritage. So, considering ICH, innovation is important, but will not be relevant if the practice and the meaning of the tradition is lost in the original context for their communities. No action, no innovation, high-tech, video record, virtual reality, 3D, inventory, connecting tradition, with modernity, none of them will have relevance if the practice and the meaning of the tradition is lost in the original context in their village for their communities. I know that this speech at a Congress on innovation like this one seems a bit old-fashioned, maybe. And of course, it's a little of a provocation. Innovation is important and for the ICH safeguard, but we have to safeguard the practice in its own context. And I'm going to finish with something that José Barbieri, the director of Memória Média and Memória Imaterial, once said. He said, because I'm so interested in innovation, I decided to work on tradition. Thank you.